All set, Molly.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome, welcome. I am thrilled to call the February meeting of the Outreach and Engagement Committee to order. Stephanie, would you please take a roll call?
Of course, good morning, everyone. Ava Bermuda Zimmerman.
Good morning. Here.
Good morning. Isha Canada has not joined us yet. Adrian Cochran. Adrian, well, looks like just joining us right now. Good morning, Adrian. We're just doing roll call. Oh, you're on mute.
Morning, all.
Good morning. Sheila Hummel.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Molly Weston Williamson.
Present.
And Justin Zartman.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you everybody for joining us. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge any members of the public who may be joining us. I think we've got a lighter list than usual, which is good. It's first thing on a cold morning. And with that, I'm going to take us on to our first order of business, which is review and approval of the January minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Justin. Do we have a second?
Second motion.
Thank you, Sheila. Any discussion?
Abstention. I wasn't present.
I don't think I was present either. It's sad to say I don't think, and this is just February for January, but I would abstain as well.
We may have a lot of us on that list. So all those in favor of approving the January minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? All those abstaining, I see Ava and Adrian, and I am also abstaining because I was also not present in January. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I will kick it over to Jessica to kick off our updates.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
You can see your screen, Jess.
Thank you. So for our first update, I'd actually like to ask Amber if she can speak to a new initiative that she's been working really hard on for the past several months.
Thank you, Jess. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. So I am really excited to introduce you to my new baby, Paid Leave Spotlight. Paid Leave Spotlight is a series of short videos in a webinar-like format on a wide range of very specific topics. So they're tailored for very targeted groups. And this is really going to support them with information and how-tos on different items, things they need to know about our program. It also may answer a lot of questions that folks may have that don't know about the program, might be interested in it. So we're also creating videos that are screen shared walkthroughs. So kind of like companion videos to go along with that, where we're actually showing folks, okay, so you saw that video on what you're going to need and why you're going to need it. Here's how you actually do it. And it's a step-by-step walkthrough of the new website. So we've had some of these in the past with the old website. Now we have the new one. So we really just want to give those a nice facelift, and they're really great companions to go along with the spotlights. So each video is going to be voiced by the subject matter expert on our team, which is great because I think folks might be getting tired of seeing mine and Jess's faces on everything. They're like, oh, we've seen that lady already. You know, we already know what that topic's about. So we want some fresh faces. So we've got folks from all over our team, from our contributions team, our IT team, our general counsel did a video with us, our benefits manager, and a couple of his folks are doing videos with us. So this is really kind of not just spotlighting the topic, but the great people on our team that really know about what it is that we're doing and them specifically what they're doing. So special thanks to Jess. She's working with our IT team to build out a whole new page just for this topic so we can let them live there and they will all be in one place, which is really, really nice. To give you an idea of some of the topics that we've already had rolling, we're doing before you apply for pay leave. So again, that's like that initial, I don't really know if that applies to me, or the folks that never take leave and, you know, would never think about taking taking the time off, but it's like, hey, it's here for you. You can do this. That would be the before you apply, all those things that you need to know. And then to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, we have the how to apply for a private plan. For those folks who are going to do a private plan, that's what they want to do. They've done the vote. This is all of the things that they need to know if they want to do that, how they need to do it, support to do it, where they need to go. And that will also have a companion video too. So a couple topics that we've just wrapped up are how to register as a TPA, also more employer tailored, but we do have more consumer tailored topics right around the corner. So we are going to be making 3 separate videos on how to apply for CT paid leave for pregnancy and childbirth and bonding. Then we're also going to do one for adoption. And then we're going to do another one for foster care. So we're going to have one video for each topic to really speak to all of those families. So really excited about that. Erin's going to be doing that one with me. So that's right around the corner. So goals here are to enhance information delivery, provided in a different format. I've been playing around with subtitles and captions to try to make it more inclusive so people, you know, who have audio issues can hear and vice versa. We've also got a few other things with I can translate all of our captions into Spanish. So I haven't dabbled with that yet, but that's around the corner as well. So I'm trying to make this really inclusive. But yeah, and then just again, highlighting the different team members to provide that opportunity to speak on their area. And we have a planned rollout to issue a release in early March when the webpage is ready to launch, so we can share this with the public. So really excited about this, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to kind of reconnect with my teammates from back in the day, shall I say. So thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Amber. And really just want to say thank you so much to Amber for she, you know, came up with this concept and has really been working so hard with it, putting together all the information decks, reviewing them with Erin to make sure they're perfect, doing, you know, dry run recordings with our teammates to get them comfortable being in front of the camera because some of them haven't done that before. So it's been a tremendous amount of work. And I'm really so grateful to you, Amber, for taking this project and running with it. And I'm excited for when we launch it and introduce it to the public. So the next topic I wanted to talk about is an employer survey that we're working on. So as I think you all know, we at the Authority are always trying to find ways to improve our employer and employee experiences with Connecticut paid leave. So our IT team has been working on some enhanced functionality in the My Account portal. So the employer portal where employers go in to file and pay their contributions. And what this enhancement will do is provide insight into approved claims for employees within their organization. This is something that employers have been asking us for from day one. It's going to essentially provide them with the same information that they currently get in a printed form, because when an employee is approved, the employer receives a form in the mail that essentially just has the name, the start and end dates of the approved leave, the weekly benefit amount. So this is really just giving them an opportunity to access that in an electronic format. But in an effort to make this as beneficial for employers as possible, we've been talking about doing a survey. So a larger scale survey that can go out through our newsletter, and that will be done through SurveyMonkey, which is software that we already use, just to gather some basic information. And then from there, we're also talking about doing some more, some focus groups to really talk one-on-one with, smaller groups of folks. So I just wanted to share some of the sample questions we've been tossing around, and I would love your feedback as far as if you can think of anything else that you feel we're kind of missing from this list. So again, not an exhaustive list, but just some idea starters. How many people in your organization would need access to the claims information? Is it necessary to have claim reason as a data point? This is something we're really weighing very heavily just because of the privacy of knowing what someone's particular claim reason is. If it's family violence, for example, that's a very sensitive area. So, we're trying to see if that's really something that employers feel strongly that they need. It is information that they get currently through the mailed form, but we know that when it comes to electronic, there's a little bit more necessity to really protect the confidentiality of that information and make sure only people with a legitimate business reason to see it have access to it. We're curious as to what reasons people would use this information, whether that's benefit coordination, if it's tracking sort of overall trends within the company. Any thoughts on how to grant access to only the proper individuals? We have a couple of ideas that we're going to propose as, here's one or two ideas. Do you like these ideas? Do you not? Do you have other thoughts for us? How often should access to the specific individuals who can look at claims data be reviewed and or renewed? And what would that process look like? We'd also like to ask them if they can foresee anyone outside of their organization needing access. For example, if they use an outsourced leave administration company. Right now we are intending for the information to be view only, but we'd like to collect information on whether having that information be exportable or downloadable in the future would be helpful. So I'd like to pause here and just ask, the group if you have any other thoughts on things that we should include in this line of questioning.
So I guess a question I have, and I'm not sure if this is a survey question, but it's more an implementation question, is thinking about whether, thinking more about the confidentiality once the information gets over to the employer. So again, I think to your point about the family violence leave, but also in general, once, if there is a single piece of paper, yes, many people could see it, but it means that one of the ways in which we're controlling that information distribution is you can't hack a piece of paper. And so it's easier to control, you can put it in a locked drawer. So thinking about how do we design the system in a way that is useful to employers, and again, conveying the same information we're already conveying, but also is ensuring that the information is only being used for its intended purpose by the people who truly need to have it. And I think particularly thinking about what are the ways to do that smart to make sure that it's not building barriers that we don't need. So I think sort of taking the same thinking that was coming around things is it necessary to have claim reason? It seems like this is an opportunity to revisit what information employers truly need. And maybe it's the same amount they're already getting, maybe it's less, figuring out, just I think taking a chance to reevaluate that. And then second, thinking about how we are structuring the IT in a way that's going to ensure that not just only the employer as an entity, but only the individual humans who truly need this information are getting it and are only getting it for the purposes they need it. Feels like a place where there's room to keep building and keep thinking.
Yeah,
Ava's got her hand up.
Thank you. And I just wanted to address that quickly before Ava, if I could. So that's definitely one topic that we've been having a lot of discussion around with IT, and that is our number one concern, and also one of the big reasons that we want to get some employer input, because just to what you're saying, we want to make this useful. We don't want to make it, more work for them. We're trying to streamline this process for them, but we also are really conscious of the fact that we want to make sure the information is protected, even though, as you're saying, it's information they already get. And so that's one of the reasons that we're really thinking sort of initially claim reason should not be included, because that really is the piece that we're most conscious of, could be something more sensitive. So we're just trying to kind of gather, if people say, what, if I don't have claim reason, this isn't helpful to me, then that, will necessitate deeper conversations. But we might find that people say, no, it doesn't really matter to me what the claim reason is, because ideally these people will have applied for FMLA as well. So their employers will already know what their claim reason is. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we are very focused on that particular issue of access and how to best grant it and also best protect privacy. So definitely something we'll continue to kind of delve into and explore. Ava?
I'm just curious, so for the survey, is there any component that takes into the equation employees? And if not, is it because this is only the employer platform side I just need a little more clarity.
Yeah, so this enhancement would be strictly through the employer My Account portal where the employers can go to make their contributions, et cetera. The employees already have access to this and much more information through the AFLAC portal where they file their claim, but this would strictly be, again, just kind of giving them an electronic way to access the information that they're currently only getting, you know, in printed format.
Thank you for that.
So Ava teed up exactly what I was going to ask next, which is, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense to be thinking about sort of vetting this platform with individual workers, I'm curious about whether it would be helpful or appropriate to bring in, I don't know, like folks who might represent that perspective and thinking about like some of these data privacy questions. So I don't know whether that's talking with labor, talking with plaintiff side, employment lawyers, just like thinking about, like, I don't think this needs to be like a big systemic thing, but it does seem like as you're having these deep and complicated conversations, like making sure that that's sort of structured into the process, to think about making sure that we're not just, I think it sounds like you were already deeply thinking about all of these, but it does seem like it's a good opportunity to get a gut check with some folks who can bring in that perspective.
Yeah,
Maybe even
absolutely.
like a focus group, just a few people that you have relationships with to hear what they have on their mind.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And that's exactly where my mind was too, is, you know, we can have employer focus groups. We can also do some employee focus groups and just kind of explain what this enhancement would be and how do they feel about it. So, and that kind of leads me into my, my next and last slide for today, which is surveys continued. So in addition to this survey that we're you know, planning to do sort of small scale with the software that we have, we're also kind of starting to think about, excuse me, larger scale surveys where we would actually, you know, solicit bids from different vendors who do this work and kind of start to look at how people feel and their understanding of the program as a whole. And so again, just kind of wanted to pick your brain. This is a very early thought that we just started talking about a few days ago. But, you know, some of the things that we're tossing around are, should this be a survey of employers, employees, or both? Should it be statewide, or should it be more geographically targeted? And also just curious if any of you have done this kind of work before, if you have any vendors you might suggest we reach out to. Just a couple of initial thoughts on information we'd be looking to gather. And there's a lot of crossover between employers and employees, but sort of general knowledge of how the program works, reasons, how the application process works, and especially the interaction with FMLA. I don't think we'll be surprised to find that there's still a lot of confusion, but really if we can find maybe specifically what the areas are that people have trouble with, can help us develop some new resources and materials. And then for employers, specifically their, you know, questions around contributions. Do they know what to do when an employee applies and what their requirements are in terms of paperwork, their understanding of how FMLA interacts, and then really getting from them other types of information that would help them both with understanding and with communicating to their employees. So Ava, I see you have your hand up.
I'm always of the mindset, the more the merrier, but whenever you're creating a survey, it's very important to make sure that you're not manipulating the data sets. So however you do decide to move forward, make sure that whatever result you get, you're very clear in presenting that result of who you pulled into that universe. For example, if you were trying to create a survey, like you said, for employers, as long as you're very clear with the parameters of who you targeted when you're presenting the results, then that's fine. That way you're trying to avoid bias when you're presenting the results of a survey. The more you whittle down who that target universe is, the more you run into the problem of creating a result, an inadvertent result that you want, or an inadvertent result in general.
Molly?
I think I agree with everything Ava said. I mean, I think this is a fantastic idea. And from my perspective, I would strongly prioritize thinking about doing a statewide systematic study of employees. Because I think here, again, thinking specifically about our outreach and engagement goals, this feels like a good juncture to evaluate what do workers know, and particularly which workers. So getting a chance to figure out, like, we know there will be gaps, like it's in the nature of human beings, doing new things, that there will be some gaps. But I think it would be extremely useful to figure out, are there income skews, and who knows about the program or knows enough about the program to get in the front door? Are there geographic skews? Are there skews by industry? Like, I think focusing on doing something that is big enough that you can do some of that breakout, and you're not gonna be able to do everything. But I think at least to be able to think in terms of income level would be super duper helpful. And I think ideally in terms of race and ethnicity as well, would really help you figure out where are the gaps, so we can figure out where to target resources. But also I think just to get a good chance to sort of do an evaluation of, like, how well are we doing? Like, are we at 75% of employees at least know enough to Google? Are we at 25%? Like, those would change how we think about what we want to do next. I think the employer side is valuable and important, but I think for thinking about the outreach and engagement goals, if nothing else, there's a whole lot more employees than there are employers. And I think getting that systematic information, particularly about the folks who you might miss otherwise, feels like a place to prioritize use of resources. And I think it's also something that is good practice generally, and not something that every program does. But I think there are ways in which we have good anecdotal evidence of sort of how things are going and where we know we need to improve. But I think having something more systematic would make a lot of sense. And if you're already thinking about commissioning an outside survey, which is an investment of resources, I think prioritizing it to be useful for that purpose would be really, really helpful. And I think could be useful for planning the next year of outreach work to really identify those gaps.
Thank you. Sheila?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we've used, I don't know if you have a budget for the surveys. But we've used Advanced CT. They're a quasi-public agency. They do a lot of economic development work for us, and they do a lot of research, and they've conducted surveys on our small business clients. So that's one option. I can give you that contact information. Or SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. They've done surveys for us too, on different small business programs. So I
Thank
can
you.
give you their contact information too.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And, this is, as I said, something we're just starting to explore. So we want to, start to meet with some of these organizations, kind of explain what our goals are, and see what, right now we don't really know what the price range might be. So that will definitely impact if perhaps it's something that we need to build into our next year's budget. But, I also just wanted to say to your points, Ava, I think this is exactly the reason why we want to use a company for whom, this is their area of expertise, because we want to make sure that we're really getting a full picture and we're not letting our own internal biases, skew how we do this. So I'm excited that it's something that we're beginning to explore, and I appreciate all of the input on both of the survey ideas. So as we kind of progress and get closer to actually making these things a reality, I will continue to keep you updated on our process.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say one more thing that's probably worth exploring is whether there are any vendors or research institutions that do large scale worker surveys already to which you can pay to add questions. So for example, I know in New York State, the Institute of Labor Relations at Cornell does a big annual survey that you can pay to add questions on, and it's a very big survey, and you can break it out by demographics. I don't know whether, Quinnipiac or somebody does something like that already, but I think it would be worth exploring. If for no other reason, then it could give you a cost-effective way to ask a couple of questions to a very large group. If that, and like probably if it's not through a research institution, it may be something that folks who are sort of regularly pulling large numbers of Connecticut residents for other reasons, like I think you might want two different instruments. You might want a targeted longer instrument that you're putting out into the field, and then 2 or 3 questions in something that's going to give you broader information across a really big group.
That's a really great idea. So I'll certainly look into that in our different, universities and see if anyone's got anything that we can piggyback on.
I think the
Not
one
because
big thing is,
unusual set of riches about pollsters. Oh, sorry, Sheila.
oh no, the one big thing is getting people's attention when
Mm.
surveys come out. It's some of the surveys that SBDC did for DECD and Advanced CT. It's hard to get people's attention to complete surveys.
Yeah, no,
So that's
I
another
agree.
thing. It's, hopefully something like this might spark their interest and they would complete it. But that's what we find too. It's very challenging to get people to reply. They're overloaded with emails. I don't know if you do it through the email or how you would do it, but that's one challenge.
Which is a good point, and definitely a question for us to ask these vendors as we're speaking with them is, what are their methods and how do they try to break through that clutter and really make sure they get a representative, and sufficient sample size.
Exactly. That's important.
All right. Well, I feel like I'm dominating the whole meeting. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the feedback. Really, it's really great to have all your expertise help us with these kinds of things. So I will stop sharing because I know we have a couple other people who have presentations.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And thank you to everyone for really thoughtful suggestions. I think we're all excited to see this move forward. And I'm going to throw it over to Nancy, who is next on our agenda.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. And I am going to share my screen if I can. Can you see this?
Yes, we can see it, Nancy.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to let you know how the podcasts give us further outreach. So in our January podcast, it was the cervical cancer podcast, and the guests were Erin and Dr. Jennifer Jorgensen. She is a gynecological oncologist at UConn Health Center. And she has agreed to get Connecticut paid leave infographics into her office to give patients and caregivers. And Jess came up with a great idea of really having some pointed questions to ask my guests if they would share it on their social media, whether they would put it into newsletters. So asking those questions has really led to some really great further outreach from the podcast, which is super exciting. In the February eating disorder podcast that was just released on Tuesday because Monday was a holiday, I spoke with Rebecca Bardwell Dueco. She is with the Walden Behavioral Care in Middletown. And a friend of mine's daughter who was being treated for an eating disorder used them. So that's why I went to them, because she talked about how wonderful they were with her daughter, and she's still in recovery and doing well. So, and it's exciting that this just got released on Tuesday and the outreach has been amazing. And Jess is going to do an in-house presentation to their weekly staff meeting in Middletown on February 27th. So she's going to be speaking to a lot of the counselors that deal directly with the patients and caregivers related to eating disorders. And Walden has been they were so excited that we did this podcast, and they've agreed to share the podcast link on social media channels during Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and they're going to tag us. And they're also including the podcast link, which is exciting, in their professional newsletter that goes to 20,000 providers, which I think is super exciting. And they were so, you ask a few questions and it's amazing the response that you get. So I'm really excited about this one. And the podcast is really very interesting. And we are doing a February Rare Disease podcast with Rich Horgan. He is the founder and CEO of CureRareDisease.org. And he did this because his brother Terry had a rare form of muscular dystrophy. And there was no treatment, there was nothing. So Rich, who graduated from Harvard with an MBA, brilliant guy that he is, decided that he was going to figure out a cure for his brother. So he started this, and he has scientists, and he works with Yale, but all across the country and even in other countries, he works with scientists to figure out some kind of protocol to help people with rare diseases. And he focuses on muscular degenerative diseases, mainly muscular dystrophies and like those. So it was very interesting talking to him and finding out about his brother Terry. He actually got a protocol passed through the FDA for Terry, and Terry started it. But unfortunately, Terry passed away in 2022. But it was really interesting hearing how he did this and started this. And I just recorded the podcast on Friday. And so we had a discussion. He didn't really even know about the program. So this was really wonderful education for him. And I sent him all of our digital information and that we have. And he, I believe, is going to want to have some more education. So Jess, he may want some more education. And they, I think that they're going to want to have hard copies to give to people and patients and caregivers. So that was a really interesting one. And there's, I mean, it's such a subculture of the rare disease. And there's so many. It was really interesting speaking with him and how he goes about and getting things passed through the FDA, which was amazing. And in March, next week, I will be doing the Brain Injury Awareness podcast because it is Brain Injury Awareness Month. And the two guests are Julia Peters, who's the executive director of the Brain Injury Alliance of Connecticut, and then Victor Dar, who also works at BIAC. He is a senior brain injury specialist. And I haven't even done this podcast, and things have happened. They're going to highlight the podcast on their social media. They've agreed to share any resulting news from stories that Carter's press release has done. Our PR firm, Carter's amazing. And BIAC has agreed to share the podcast into their e-newsletters, which is wonderful. And we haven't even done the podcast yet. So I'm really excited about doing that next month. And I also have a kidney transplant patient who has used Connecticut paid leave for his transplant. His name is Nick Arsenault, and of course, he's already done an op-ed for us about Connecticut paid leave and how it helped him. So some of our other outreach has now led to me doing a podcast with him, which I think is great. And we might even be doing some more testimonial with him that Jessica is working on. So she's working on trying to get people who've used paid leave to do some testimonials and have those in our back pocket as well. So I'm looking forward to that. That is going to be on the 27th that I'm going to be interviewing Nick and talking about Connecticut paid leave with him. And finally, as of this morning, I think it was 4,009 downloads from the podcast. But this is Buzzsprout. That is the platform that we use that sort of like pushes it out into the universe of Apple and Google and Spotify. And they have a little bit of information about what it's doing, but you do see the growth of the podcast, which is really exciting. And I think with Jessica's questions and getting more of our podcast guests to share and do that, we're really just going to grow the podcast. So I'm really excited about that and where it's going. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And I think that's a brilliant and really smart strategy to be thinking of the ways in which the podcast can feed other kinds of outreach, but also other kinds of outreach can feed the podcast. Like, I think it's really smart and strategic and makes a ton of sense. I do want to highlight how much I appreciate that. I think the podcast in particular highlights use cases people might not think about. So for example, until this meeting, as a full-time paid leave person, I've never thought about paid leave and eating disorders before, but of course it's a thing that people need. And of course it's a thing we should be promoting. And I suspect there'll be other folks who are having that light bulb, like, oh yeah, this is another thing moment. And I think the podcast in particular has done a really, really great job on that. And I think that's going to be hugely valuable. Does anyone else have questions or thoughts for Nancy?
Thank you, Molly.
Hearing none, I'm gonna turn it over to Maddie with our legislative update.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I'm having internet issues. It's perfect timing. So I'm just on my phone. So I hope I don't get disconnected, but thank you, Amber, for sharing your screen. So I just have a really quick legislative and community relations update to share. So as you know, the legislative session for 2024 began last Wednesday, on February 7th. An act concerning revisions to paid family medical leave was raised as a concept in the Labor Committee on February 8th last week. So that will be our a bill with the technical changes that we've proposed, and we've reviewed a few different times with the board and this committee that I'm sure I'll touch on again next month and kind of moving forward until session ends in May. We are expecting a public hearing within the next few weeks on that bill as well. So we're continuing to just work on things, monitor different issues that are coming up and where we should kind of lend our voice with testimony to as well over the next few weeks. I also wanted to share that Representative Ann Hughes has a really great testimonial video out in collaboration with the healthcare provider that she worked with to be an organ donor a few years ago. It's a really great video. It's about 4 minutes long, so I won't share it now, but she shares her story as a kidney donor, again, in honor of National Donor Day, which was yesterday. And she also mentions kind of how that played a role in her being a champion for paid leave in its passage in 2019. So it's a great story. I would encourage like everyone to watch it if you have time, but yeah. Next slide. Thank you. So I also wanted to mention again that we are excited to host an event at the Legislative Office Building in honor of International Women's Day. The event will be in room 2B of the Legislative Building at 11 a.m. We're co-hosting it with the Council on Women and Girls and the Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. It'll be sort of like a panel discussion moderated by the Lieutenant Governor. And it will include small business owners, legislative champions, advocates, and also women who have utilized Connecticut paid leave and them sharing their story. So we're excited. It'll be more of a celebration of our program and kind of how it's benefited women so far over the last 2+ years of paying benefits. That's all I have. I'll take any questions if folks have them.
Thanks, Maddie. Do folks have any questions for Maddie? I do want to just note how pretty the International Women's Day event invitation is.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have a question. Just what you're hearing I know it's, the session just started, but are we hearing good thing? I feel like there's less of a concern now with paid leave and everything, and people see that it's working well. Are you getting the same sense at the Capitol?
Yeah, well, go ahead, Erin. Thank you.
It is very dependent on who you talk to. So there are a large number of people who absolutely recognize the value, who see the value, who are eager to partner with us to make sure that their constituents understand the program, grow. There, however, was a bill that was raised yesterday that, although the topic wasn't described in the title, part of the bill would put the maximum contribution rate at 0.04% instead of 0.05%. This was raised by one of the Republican senators, and it's part of the House Republicans' legislative package. And so even though they all seem to acknowledge that their constituents are benefiting from the program, there's still this feeling that we cost too much. So we are working to make sure people understand that the outcome of reducing the contribution rate maximum to 0.4% is that we will go bankrupt in less than 10 years. And that's a really bad thing to happen, especially for people who purport to acknowledge that there's value in our program. So it's a mixed bag. You know, they're not as adamant that the program is bad, but there's still these sort of pockets of either it costs too much, which is funny because we're the cheapest one going. Literally, like we have the lowest contribution rate across the country, and employers don't pay, which is unusual for the rest of the state country. So they think it's either we should be less expensive, and there's still sort of a philosophical view that employees and employers should negotiate all terms and conditions in a complete free market. The quote on paid sick days was, if an employee wants to negotiate with their employer for a right to have an office with a window instead of paid sick days, the government shouldn't prevent that from happening. So there's that perspective still being stated. So we're working to just continue to show the value and continue to point out that clearly people aren't getting this benefit from their employers, and that's why this is an important safety net.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Maddie, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, just we're trying to just stay really present in the building, and we have like a legislator campaign that's running where our ads are popping up on like high traffic, you know, different news sites that people are visiting. Trying to be in the building a lot. We have a legislator newsletter that goes out monthly, and also a new fact sheet too that we update monthly that shows the impact of our program, like how many people have access benefits and et cetera. So yeah, just trying to stay really present.
Thank you. That's really helpful context. And I think just to underscore how valuable Maddie and everyone's work is, and really making sure that that you're not just hearing complaining voices in the legislature, and that, you know, I think it is a reality of the world in which we live, that no matter how valuable this program is, no matter how much value it's bringing to Connecticut workers and employers, it needs to be not just defended, but championed, probably for the rest of time. And I think having that be built into one of the things that the authority do is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I hope it goes without saying, but like, if there are things that we as the board can do that are helpful in some of that championing, I think we would all be really glad to be resources. And I think that is part of our role to do precisely that, working with and through the authority. I see Jessica's got her hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, which I haven't even had a chance to speak to Maddie about this yet, because I just had this conversation yesterday with our digital media vendor, but we're talking about actually expanding our legislative campaign. Just, you know, re-looked at our resources, and there's a new Hartford Business Journal is launching a new digital product specifically for legislators to kind of enter into the arena with News Junkie and Capitol Report. So we're just talking about, you know, using that as another resource. So the legislative campaign is in effect, but might also, you know, be bolstered a little bit as well. So we're continuing to really make sure that we're out there in front of those decision makers, especially during this really critical time.
Thank you for sharing that. That's super helpful. Anything else on the legislative update? Okay, hearing none, is there any old business we should address? Hearing none, is there any new business we should address? Okay, anything else we should address for the good of the order before we head to adjournment? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Justin. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Eva. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I believe the ayes have it. So thank you so much, everybody, for a wonderful meeting, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in the board meeting next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.